For more than 160 years, the humble U.S. penny has jingled in pockets, cluttered junk drawers, and filled tip jars across the nation. It's the coin Americans love, hate, collect, and complain about, all at the same time. Today we're diving deep into the history of the penny, why Abraham Lincoln ended up on its face, the surprising ways this tiny coin shaped American culture, and the big reasons it was finally discontinued. Our story begins in the early 1800s. Back then, the penny was massive, almost the size of a modern half-dollar. These large cents were made of pure copper and featured Lady Liberty on the front. No presidents, no memorials, just classical art and heavy metal. But by the mid-19th century, copper prices surged. That big, bulky penny became too expensive to produce. So in 1857, the U.S. Mint shrank the coin down to the small, lightweight size we recognize today. It was cheaper, but Americans weren't happy about it. People actually mourned the disappearance of the old pennies, hoarding them like tiny treasures. So why is Abraham Lincoln on the penny? To answer that, we jump to 1909, the 100th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. Before this moment, no U.S. coin had ever featured a real person. It was considered too close to royalty or hero worship. But Lincoln was different. He was the president who preserved the nation during its darkest hour. He represented honesty, unity, and American resilience. Artist Victor David Brenner was commissioned to design the new coin. When it debuted in 1909, people were captivated. A real person on a coin? That was groundbreaking. And Lincoln wasn't facing left by accident. Copper engravings naturally oriented him that way. So his portrait remained looking toward the year 1909 for the next century. The penny quickly became a cultural icon. Kids collected wheat pennies like treasure. Stores had penny candy. Payphones cost a few cents. Parking meters ate pennies by the handful. If you grew up in America, the penny wasn't just currency, it was a memory. And then came one of the wildest moments in penny history, the 1943 steel penny. During World War II, copper was needed for ammunition, so the mint temporarily produced pennies made of zinc-coated steel. They looked silver, they rusted easily, and people hated them, but today, collectors adore them. A few rare copper 1943 pennies even escaped the mint by mistake, and those tiny accidents now sell for hundreds of thousands of dollars. By the 1980s, something surprising happened. Copper prices spiked again, and the penny became more expensive to produce than it was worth. So, in 1982, the U.S. shifted to pennies made mostly of zinc, with a thin copper coating. They looked the same, but underneath, they were basically candy-coated metal. But even the cheaper pennies weren't saving the mint money. Each penny cost more than a penny to make. More in materials, more in labor, more in transport, and far more in time. That meant the U.S. was literally losing tens of millions of dollars per year, producing a coin most people didn't even want. Economists called it the penny paradox. Americans complained about pennies, but refused to let them disappear. Why? Because pennies are emotional. Everyone has a memory tied to them. Finding a lucky penny, rolling coins with a parent, or spotting a wheat penny in change. But in the end, economics won. After decades of debate, the government finally discontinued the penny. Production was halted, and the transition to rounding cash transactions to the nearest nickel began, just as countries like Canada, Australia, and New Zealand had done years earlier. So what's the legacy of the penny? It's more than a coin. It's a piece of American identity. A symbol of thrift, nostalgia, and the belief that small things can still matter. Even if the penny itself couldn't survive rising costs, changing times, and a cashless world, its story continues to shine. This was the rise and fall of the American penny, a tiny coin with a surprisingly massive history. If you enjoyed this deep dive into everyday things with extraordinary stories, don't forget to like and subscribe. Do you have a subject you'd like to hear more about? Let us know in the comments, and stay curious, because there's always more to explore.